Okay, so we've now got our process mapped out from a very high level, running down the middle of our SIPOC here. The next task is to come up with the inputs, the outputs, the customers and the suppliers for each of these rows individually, okay? And that's what we're going to go through now. So, exactly the same process steps that we had, okay? And here we have the rows, as you can see, completed. Now I'll just go through one or two of these. So if we take the first row, for example, the process step was to insert the filter. Okay, so think about what is the output once that filter has been inserted. Well, the output is we now have a coffee machine with a filter in place. The customer of that is basically the coffee machine itself, because the coffee machine has that filter in place now. Going back a step, before we insert the filter, what is the input that we need for that process to happen? Well, the input is the filter paper itself, okay? So that filter paper is the input that causes that process to take place. And who supplied the filter paper? Well, generally with a high street coffee shop, they'd more than likely get their materials from some kind of a wholesaler. So in this case, the supplier is the wholesaler. Right, we'll just do one more. The second step is to add the coffee grounds. The output of adding the coffee grounds is that we now have a coffee machine with coffee grounds in. That's the actual physical thing that we now have. And again, the customer of that is the coffee machine itself, because it's the coffee machine that possesses the coffee grounds. To get to the point where we add the coffee grounds, the input that we need is the ground coffee. So that's the input required for that process step. And once again, where a high street coffee shop would get their ground coffee from would tend to be a wholesaler's. And it's a case of sequentially going through row by row until you've completely populated your entire SIPOC. And as you can see now, what we have is we have the full process steps, all of the inputs and outputs, and all of the suppliers and the customers. So we've now basically got a framework or a boundary which ties the whole process in together. So when we're looking to improvements, we know now the steps we need to investigate, we know the inputs and the outputs involved, and very importantly, we know the key stakeholders who are going to be involved in this process.